So you guys are probably wondering who's this guy, and I'll try my best to click and hold the mic, but I have a hard time walking and chewing bubble gum, so we'll be okay. But I'm the Executive Vice President at Max Digital. We're a Chicago-based automotive software company. We do inventory management, merchandising, digital retailing, but I'm not going to talk about any of that stuff today. So just giving you a little bit of background about who we are, what we do. I've been in the car business my entire life, so I grew up in the car business since I was a kid. I've done everything from detail cars and clean the bathroom to selling cars, sales management, finance, run dealerships. I was a COO of a 28-store group in 9 states before. I've worked in the auto finance space, and I took about 4 years off to join the Marine Corps. I did 2 tours in Iraq, so my joke is that thank you. So my joke is that I only know how to do 2 things really well, and that's sell cars and shoot guns, and because I'm from Detroit, I know how to do both at the same time. So that's a little bit about myself. My dad was in the car business as well, so this is literally, my passion. I love the car business. I love everything about it, and I want to talk to you guys about some stuff that I learned today. So what I'm going to talk to you about today is going to help you effectively run any business in any industry. This is not specific to dealerships, but I'm going to use a lot of examples that are going to make it very specific to dealerships to help reinforce a couple key points here. But whether you're a vendor in the room, whether you have businesses in other industries as well, the stuff that I'm going to talk to you about today are things that I've learned over my career, right? So I've learned these things over the past 20 years, and I've seen them turn around underperforming teams and companies. And I've learned a lot of this through successes over time, and I've learned a lot more of it through failures over time. I've learned it from good managers, from bad managers. I've learned some things from being a good manager myself and from being a bad manager myself. Anybody can raise a hand real quick. Have you ever been a bad manager? Call yourself out, be honest. Okay, great. We got a lot of honest people in here. So I have been at times as well. When Brad Lee was up here, I'll say Brad Lee was up here talking about some of those things that he said, like, I give a lot of people advice, but I don't do it myself. Even today, some of this stuff just is glaring, right? Is like, I'm going to tell you guys some things that when I'm up here telling you, I'm going to have to remind myself I have to go back and do this stuff. So some of these things are kind of common sense, but they should be very impactful. So some proof in the pudding here. I spent a little bit of time in my career at a company called Credit Acceptance. Any of you guys know who that is? Quick show of hands, okay? Wildly successful company, probably the most successful, most profitable auto finance company, prime or subprime in any space right now, right? So I spent some time working with those guys, and from 2007 to now, they went from trading for about $12 a share to over $400 a share. So I'm sure anybody would love to have that kind of growth in their business over time. And a big part of that is implementing what I'm going to talk to you guys about today. I've helped a dealer group grow from 7 stores when I took it over to 28 in about 2.5 years. That's crazy growth. That's crazy growth. If you guys can imagine going from 7 stores to 28 in 2.5 years, that's crazy growth. So a lot of that was implementing some of these things, and then I've just started implementing this at Max Digital over the last 6 years, or 6 months, I should say. So speed check is what this is all about. So you're probably wondering, what is a speed check? So a speed check provides you with the framework to evaluate where you need to give your attention in your business, right? So there's so many things going on every day. There's all kinds of fire drills. We're in a bit of a reactive business, and it's really hard to determine where to spend your time and where to give your attention. So this is going to give you a framework to determine where to give your attention to. And managers, in my experience, often struggle with solving the right problems. And the saying that I have up here is, when you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail. Has anybody ever heard that before? So by that I mean, if you haven't heard that before, is that based on your background and your experience, you tend to solve problems based on what you know and what you're good at. So if you came up in the car business on the sales side of the business, your answer is usually always to sell more cars. But your problems may be in managing expenses. Your problems may be in service. Your problems may be with training, with some other things. I know a lot of people who have a training background, and their solution to problems was always train more, but it may be that they were spending too much money in a different space. So I'm going to help you guys figure this piece out a little bit. So if you break your business down into a few key areas and ask the right questions, it's going to help you get to the root cause of the problem. And I use this analogy quite a bit, is you can stop diagnosing or working on just the symptoms and actually start to cure the disease that may be in your dealership. So what are the 5 areas? If you guys are going to write anything down, I know you get the deck. These are the 5 areas of a speed check. This is the acronym, right? Support, people, environment, expectations, and design. So these are pretty broad categories, but you're going to see how each thing that I talk about falls underneath these. First one is support. So does each person have the knowledge, skills, and tools necessary to succeed in their role? And I don't know if it's just that the Bradleys are really good designers of training curriculums, and this kind of, I followed Sean and then followed Brad after this, because what I'm going to talk about really reinforces a lot of what was said earlier today. But you need to make sure that everybody has the knowledge, the skills, and the tools necessary to succeed. So knowledge is talking about things like training, right? Are you teaching them what they need to know to do the job, right? So there's, you can know how to do a job and learn the information, but does that mean you have the skills necessary to do the job? No, right? Two different things. So one, you need to teach the information, and next you need to develop the skills. And how do you guys think you develop skills? Training, practice, right? So you need to practice it, you need to do it, and you need to sometimes shadow somebody and see how it's done the right way. And then tools are the other piece. We're going to spend a little bit of time talking about tools because there's a lot of great tools kind of surrounding the room right now and a lot of great tools that you guys use. But if you don't have the knowledge and you don't have the skills, the tools are no good. And I use the analogy that all these great tools are just like tools to a carpenter, right? If you've got somebody that has no idea how to build a house, right? They just started a job as a carpenter, but you buy them all the most expensive, highest speed tools in the world. Can they build a very good house for you? Not at all, right? So the tools are useless without the knowledge and the skills. Next part of support here is, can I honestly say I'm training my employees consistently? And this is something that both the gentlemen talked about this morning, was that training is not an event. It is not when you start, I train you. It is, am I consistently training my people on a regular basis? How many people have a regular cadence of training? If you're not spending the $2,000 a month or the $5,000 a month, how many people at least have some kind of regular cadence of training they do in their dealership? Okay, that's a good start, but that's probably like 1/5 or 1/6 of the room that actually trains people on a regular cadence. Why don't some of you guys train people on a regular cadence? Anybody? Got to be a good reason? Takes too much time, right? We got too many things going on, takes too much time. As we dive in a little bit deeper, you'll see how you have to free up some time to do these things. Am I developing my high potential people so they're ready for their next role? How many people have a development plan or some kind of place? When Brad was up here, he talked about how do you go from a salesman to a dealer principal? Does anybody have any kind of like training track or development plan for their folks? Show of hands. Nobody? Okay, so this is super important. I just purchased, I want to say it was 2 weeks ago, the most recent NADA workforce study. And it said, on average, it is 80%. It was already, I think, 74% last year was turnover in the industry. It is 80% now. So those of you that have 10 salespeople, that analogy that was used earlier, if there's only going to be 2 people that are sticking around, that's true, right? And why would you want to stick around someplace that you have no idea what your next step is, right? I don't think there's a lot of people that aspire to just sell cars their entire life. There's some phenomenal people that are awesome car salespeople, right, that sell 100 cars a month. I personally sold 40 cars a month when I was a car salesperson. I love selling cars, but I aspired to do more, and I was lucky enough to have somebody that invested in me, that gave me kind of a career path and helped show me how I could do more. So that's like a basic start, is that you have to have some kind of plan of how you're going to develop your people, especially your high potential people, or you will lose them. Are there any tools or technology that could help my team more effectively or efficiently accomplish their work? So only after you've done those other things would I say start looking at these tools. Because if you don't have people following your basic processes already, new technology isn't going to work. I'm sure some of the folks in the room that do digital retailing right now can have probably quite a few conversations about trying to implement this when there's a lot of things broken in a store already. If you're not doing the basics well, a new tool isn't going to fix it for you. One of my favorite sayings is that technology will not sell cars by itself. Unfortunately, we oftentimes think that. I'm just going to subscribe to this new thing, I'm going to buy this new thing, and I'm going to sell more cars. But a lot of it goes into the execution. Next, are there any tools or technology that we're paying for that we're not using or underutilizing? So these next 3 bullets are more in terms of running a business or a department, being honest with yourself and checking what you're actually using and what you're not, right? So how many people look at a financial statement every month? Okay, good part of the room, right? So I looked at 20 plus financial statements every month and asked a lot of hard questions, right? Especially some of those when you get into the bigger ticket items is, what is this? Even if I know what it is, what is this? Okay, what do we use it for? What's our ROI, right? What kind of return are we getting on that investment? If you're not asking those hard questions all the time, you need to. And if you're not using something, which, I mean, I would probably venture to say the vast majority of this room, you're paying for stuff you're not using, in my experience at least. The next one is, am I paying too much for any of my tools or technology, and can I replace them with less expensive options? So a lot of times there's innovators in a space, and they come out with technology, and it becomes widely adopted by people, but they charge a ton of money for it. And as a dealer, I wasn't as keenly aware of this, but now that I've gotten more into the software space, I acknowledge this more. So somebody comes out with a really innovative tool, they charge you a lot of money for it, you're on a year contract, or maybe you're on more, or maybe it auto-renews. And then there's more people that have come out in the space, and they've come out with new tools and cooler tools, and they've come out for less money, but you're just used to using a tool, and you don't know that maybe there's an option out there that's half the price or less. You need to sometimes talk to these people that are in the room and see, is there an option out there that could be better than what I'm currently using? Am I leveraging my relationships with vendors and asking them for help on a regular basis? So Brad Lee talked about this as well. You have to demand this from the people you do business with. I personally demanded this from the people that I did business with all the time, or I would not do business with them. They have to support your business, right? They have to support your business. If they don't, they're the wrong person to partner with. They have to support you. So make sure you check that all the time. If you say, I can't afford training, or I don't want to invest in training, there's a lot of people that would happily give you free training. For the vendors that are around the room, can I get a quick show of hands of how many people would happily train their dealers without charging them right now? Okay. Everybody, right? Everybody in this room would. You just have to ask. And I found out over time is that people are afraid to ask. They don't know who to ask. They don't know who to talk to, but everybody is willing to. And if they're not, they're the wrong person. People, most important thing. We always hear people are the most important asset. That's very true. So do I have the right people in the right seats and enough of them? That's the important question to ask. Kind of the overarching question is, do I have the right people in the right seats and enough of them? And there's a couple ways to determine this, right? And the first one is does everyone on my team consistently behave the way that I expect them to? Again, I'm going to get you guys some arm exercises today because I know it's right before lunch and this is an early start after St. Patrick's Day. So like quick show of hands again. How many people can say everybody at their store behaves the way they expect them to? Not one, right? Hey, same with me. It was really hard. But you have to start setting that expectation and demanding that of people as well, is that they behave the right way. And then you have to let people know when they don't behave the right way. And I call this weak-ass managers. People that don't call people out. If they don't behave the way that you expect them to and you never call them out, whose fault is that? Yeah, it's your fault, right? My fault. If I'm the one running it, if they don't behave the way that I expect them to and I don't call them out, that's my fault. I can't say I'm too busy, right? But you have to call those people out. And the best question to ask to evaluate this is, would I rehire each of them if given the opportunity? And I like to add the word enthusiastically. Would I enthusiastically rehire each person for that role if given the opportunity, right? Now, everybody knows when you're in an interview, you put on your best game face. You talk about all the great things you did. You probably rarely talk about all the bad things you did, all your bad habits. The salesperson doesn't come in and say, you know what, I smoke 2 packs a day and I love to leave all the cigarette butts on the side of the building. You know, they don't say I've got a drinking problem and I stay out all night and I like to come in 15 minutes late 3 days a week. They don't say that stuff, right, in the interview. You have to find that out. Well, now you have the luxury, if you're going to start looking at your business through this lens, you can say, would I enthusiastically rehire each person for that role if given the opportunity? And again, it goes back to having that conversation with somebody. Is if you wouldn't, you need to tell them you wouldn't, and you need to tell them why. You need to come up with a plan for them to make a correction. Last one on here. Am I attracting and recruiting high-quality people or settling for what's available out there? So again, with 80% turnover, do you think attracting top talent is probably really important right now? How many of you guys do a really good job attracting top talent? Okay. No one? So is there a lot of people lining up to sell cars? College graduates, they get out, that's what I want to do, sell cars? No? So I went to Northwood University. Anybody familiar with Northwood University? So that's car school, right? That's where I went to for my bachelor's, my MBA. There's actually college graduates there that want to come out and sell cars. They want to be a GM. They want to be a dealer principal one day. But that's like a tiny, tiny percentage of the overall population that actually wants to do that. So this is where the interactive piece comes in. I don't know, is there another mic available, or do you want me to pass this around? But I want to know what some of you guys do to try to attract people, try to attract some talent to your business. Any volunteers? You're all in business, so you got to be attracting some decent people. The dealership had to attract you somehow. You want to share?
So when I have good people, I imagine that they know good people. So we pay $1,000 to anyone in my organization to attract good talent. And we pay them that $1,000 as long as they stay for 90 days.
Great. Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, we got one in the back. No? Okay. I'll talk a little quieter. That's booming. That's excellent. So really, two great points by some attendees here for how to recruit top talent, and I can second that. And I can tell you, in my couple decades in the industry, some of the best salespeople too that I've ever hired came from restaurants, came from bars, came from places like that where they were excellent at customer service, interacting with people, just being friendly. I mean, how many salespeople do you have that are just? Almost seems like they're afraid to pick up the phone and talk to somebody. Right? They love to send emails. You look in the CRM and you can see just this high volume of emails, and it's like, well, just pick up the phone and talk to somebody, right? So if you've got people that are familiar with, interacting with people, like you said, resolving conflicts, things like that, especially in service, that's great. Sales, that's great as well. So great things. And the $1,000 referral is awesome, right? I've often found the same thing is that good people know other good people, bad people know other bad people, right? So if you've got one of your worst salespeople referring somebody, maybe you stretch it out to 6 months. I don't know. See how they do. But very, very good advice, guys. All right, next. Is my hiring process objective or subjective? So what do I mean by this? Do you actually have some type of format where you evaluate the people you interview? Do you know what a good salesperson looks like? Do you know what a good GM looks like? Do you know what a good used car manager looks like? Or are you doing it based on your gut and your opinion? Are you doing it based on, that's a pretty likable guy? Because I can tell you what, I've made some of the worst hiring decisions in my life hiring likable guys, right? We're dealing with people who are career salespeople, right? So they're like professional interviewers. They can really get you to like them. But I wouldn't even want to share some of these stories because there's a video camera in here about some of the people I've had to fire over time and what they did in a dealership because it's appalling. Right? And some of these people, I didn't have a very objective process. It was very subjective. It was based on, did I like that person or not? So one of the things you need to look at is, do I have some type of scorecard that I can actually evaluate candidates against each other and see who is the best fit for this role? Do I have the right number of people in each role? And I'll use the example of salespeople here. So in my career, I've worked in many different dealerships where there's two ends of the spectrum. And the first end of the spectrum is flood the floor. How many people have worked in a dealership where it's flood the floor, right? You got 100 salespeople. You're just hiring everybody, hoping that it works, right? And what happens here is there's not a lot of training that goes on. There is a lot of turnover that goes on. Maybe everybody's getting upped. You drive to these dealerships, and these are the guys that it looks like there's a flock of seagulls flying around the dealership waiting to take the up, right? It's a little bit scary. Somehow half of them are smoking cigarettes. No offense if you smoke cigarettes. It's just a generalization, but that's kind of the first model. The other model is expecting superheroism, right? So maybe there's not as high turnover here. You've got the same, 6 guys that have worked in the dealership forever. Maybe they all make a decent living. They're all pretty good. But what happens here is they get complacent. You often have really slow response times to your leads, and you're not capitalizing all your opportunities. So you need to really take an honest look at your business and say, do I have the right number of people in each role? And not be afraid to inject some new energy sometimes if you're a little bit stagnant. Do I have contingency plans if in place if anybody leaves? Who has a really good contingency plan in case there's turnover in their dealership? Okay, so it's a known fact that we have 80% turnover, right? But nobody has contingency plans in case anybody gets fired. Now, what I see here is horrible in dealerships across the country, and I've worked for a lot of dealerships, and I've probably worked with thousands of dealerships. And I can tell you that in the vast majority of dealerships, what I see is that, like F&I, especially in a smaller store that's not in a major market where you've got one F&I guy. What happens if that F&I guy quits? What happens to your business? It's not good, right? It's not good. I see this with used car managers as well. You know, there's one guy that knows how to use your IMS and knows how to price your cars and properly merchandise your cars. We see this all the time, right? That guy leaves, that guy gets sick, that guy has a health problem because he eats like crap and never takes any time off, right? That's what happens, right? So you need to have a contingency plan in place, and a good way to have a contingency plan in place is to always be networking. Do what the gentleman in the back said, is you're always looking for people. I'm a massive LinkedIn fan because it's helped save my butt many times of always having a bit of a bench on hand and just being nice to people, taking people out to lunch that are maybe a used car manager at another dealership, that are maybe a finance manager at another dealership, and always having a bit of a bench on hand in case I need somebody, right? Other good thing to do is cross-train people. How many of you guys cross-train people at your dealership in different positions? You have multiple people that can do F&I. You have multiple people that could, do the duties of a used car manager. Some of the most innovative stores that I work with do things like this, and I'll give you an example with the used car department, is they have what's called an 80-20-20-80 model to help avoid situations like this. So they'll have like an asset manager. So 80% of his job is buying cars, pricing cars, merchandising cars, doing that. 20% is actually working with customers, taking TOs, desk and deals. Then they've got somebody else who 80% of their job is desk and deals, taking TOs, working with customers, coaching employees, and 20% of his job is, stocking, pricing, merchandising, things like that. So if one goes, at least you know that you've got somebody that is a backup plan in place. But it's proven to be very successful for these guys. I think they've opened another 7 stores in the last year, so they're doing really well. Last piece here. This is going to kind of piggyback on what was talked about earlier today. Are my people investing in themselves, or are they just expecting others to invest in them? So if you look at people like a business, right? If somebody asked you to invest in their business, but they didn't put a penny of their own money in the business, would you be super excited about investing in that business? I definitely wouldn't, right? If they said, hey, look, I'm not putting anything into that, but you should give me $1 million, I'd say, no, absolutely not. It's the same thing with people. If all of their free time is spent, drinking, partying, doing whatever, and they're not willing to pick up a business book, to hop on some virtual training, to attend something like this, if they're not asking you for opportunities, if they don't want to shadow somebody else in the dealership and learn something else, well, why should I invest my time in you, right? So you want to make sure that your people are actually investing in themselves and coach them and support them when they want to go to events like this, when they want to do virtual training, when they want to do things to better themselves. Next is expectations. So are they falling short, or do they just not know where the goal line is? So everybody knows, I'll use a simple example again, salespeople, right? What's their job every day? Sell cars, right? Now, how do they arrive at their goal of how many cars they're going to sell that month, typically? So a lot of them don't have a goal. Just, hey, sell as many cars as you can. How about anybody else? You're giving your goal. I need you to sell 15 this month, okay? What else do we see? Try to beat their last month's goal. Okay, so you sold 12 last month. I want you to try to stretch to hit 14, right? I have other people that have sales meetings. How many do you think you're going to sell this month? You got that same guy, 40, right? 40. How many did you sell last month? 10. How about the month before that? 10. How about the month before that? 10, right? So how are you going to get to that number, right? So what I'm getting at here is that it's not just setting the goal. It's not just the output, what output do I expect of you, but actually helping set the expectations of what inputs are necessary to arrive at those outputs, right? And you only can do that if you actually track metrics, right? How many phone calls does it take? How many appointments do you need to have based on your average closing ratio to sell that many cars? You have to break that down for people. If they don't understand that, they're never going to reach those goals. They'll never even sell those extra 2 cars. Next, does my team understand what's expected of them and what their priorities are every day, right? Another one of my favorite sayings is, if everything's urgent, then nothing is, right? So if people don't know what their priorities are every day when they come into the dealership, you can't expect them to just figure it out on their own. And I've fallen into this trap over time, and Brad talked about this earlier as well, is that you know what you know because you've been doing this for a really long time. And just human nature is we expect people to know what we know. And you forget that you learn some of this stuff. You just expect people to learn it. You need to teach them, right, what to do. Some of the stuff on social media. When I did a lot of subprime business at a dealership, one of the things that I laid out with people was, take the references, right, from your last customer. And the first thing you do the next day is call those 5 references and say, hey, your friend Mike just bought a car the other day. He said you might be in the market as well. I just want to introduce myself. My name's Bill, and I work for Bill Johnson Chevrolet. Something that simple is give them a bit of a plan in terms of what they need to do and what their priorities are every day. Next one is, are these expectations realistic based on their knowledge, skills, and abilities? So we go back to, are you setting a goal that maybe is too high for a new salesperson? Did you give them 60 days to ramp up and then you expect them to sell 15 cars? And oftentimes we expect a lot out of people, and that's part of the reason that there's really high turnover, is that do you think people like to go to a job every day where they feel like they're failing or falling short every month? No, I definitely wouldn't, right? I wouldn't be excited about that. So you need to make sure that you can do those things. Lastly here is, are we clearly communicating how current performance compares to expectations, and have we agreed upon action plans to improve? So you need to actually take a look at how they're performing compared to how you expect them to perform, and if there's a gap, come up with an action plan. Actually sit down with them and map that out for them. I'm going to move quick because we're trying to catch up time. Environment. Easy question to ask, right, is do people like coming here every day? Another show of hands real quick. How many people at your dealership like coming there every day? Okay. Not very many, if any, right? This is very common. Something simple to do is to ask people why. If you say, hey, do you like coming here every day? And they say, not every day, but most days. Okay, well, how about the days you don't like coming here? Why is that? You can help figure out what you can do to remove barriers from people from being successful. Another one right here is, does my team trust me and my managers, right? So you don't have to be drinking buddies with people. You don't have to hang out with people. You just have to have integrity. And this is rampant across the industry, is we do things that we don't realize deteriorate our integrity and make the people that work with us and for us lose trust in us, right? So I'll give you a really specific example. If you take a TO and you go out and you're talking to a customer and you're really friendly, you're really nice, you're trying to do everything to accommodate them, and then you guys go back to the desk to work the deal and you're like, this guy's a this and this and that, and this and this and that, you're two-faced, right? I'm guilty of that myself. I've done that at times in my career as well. Who wants to be honest and say they've done that as well? Oh, I really want to help you out, Mr. and Mrs. Customer. I want to give you a great deal. And then after you clean their clock and you made $5,500 on them, you're high-fiving, right? That's not an environment of integrity, right? Do I ask team members how we can get better regularly? So Walmart just got a new CEO. He sent out a communication to the entire company. And he said, what can we do to get better? He got 2,700 responses that asked for one thing. Does anybody know what it was? It's a recent article. What was it? So it wasn't the greeters, but it was something as simple as this. It was the toilet seat covers, right? Crazy, you'd think, right? The CEO asked you this, and what do you ask for? That's what you ask for. And it was because taking them away made the employees feel like they didn't care about their quality of life or their working conditions, right? Just ask people what you could do to get better, and it can help. And then if you ask that, you actually have to do something with that feedback. Otherwise, people are going to stop giving you feedback. So does my team enjoy working together? This is like a basketball team analogy I'll give you. So if you've seen some teams win championships that weren't the 5 best players, right? They just worked really well together. And you've seen some teams lose that had some of the best players statistically on them. Your team needs to work well together, and they need to feel appreciated. Next one here. Am I measuring the inputs or just the outputs? We talked about this a bit already, so I'll move past this. Is the performance of each department or individual easy to review on a consistent basis? If you're using the right technology, if you have the right things in place, you can review it easily. If you can't, it's going to take you a lot more time to run your business. And can we use data to explain why we perform better or worse than expected in each department or with each person? So we often hear things like, oh, it was too hot, it was too cold, it snowed, it didn't snow enough. There's always an excuse that's it's not my fault, right? So we need to drill down to the data to make sure that we know exactly why things didn't work out. And my last point here, I saw the wrap-up sign. They're going to play the Oscar music in a minute for me. So design. Have I allowed conflicts or bottlenecks to emerge? So this is all about how your dealership is designed, right? And what you find is that people accept a status quo on how their dealership's designed, right? This is how my last dealership I worked at was designed. This is how I showed up. This is what the org design looks like. You need to challenge this, right? And say, is my current structure organized to optimize efficiency and effectiveness? Are my comp plans aligned with organizational goals, or do they conflict with each other? Right? So this is when you've got infighting between sales and service or between sales and F&I, typically you have conflicting comp plans. You need to evaluate that. Do my managers and I have enough time for coaching? If you don't, you're wrong. You need to delegate more, and a lot of people don't delegate because they think it's job security. I want to say, Tony Ann, did you mention that earlier, right? Is people don't like to, they want to be the keeper of the CRM. You need to delegate. You need to teach other people to do it so you can free up time for coaching. And is the most important work consistently getting done? If it's not, everybody always says, oh, I was busy selling cars. I was busy selling cars. Well, that's important, right? But if your time to market sucks, you're going to be selling a lot less cars. So you got to keep your eye on the ball. And last point here is, are my leaders, managers able to balance efficiency, being a subject matter expert, making important decisions, and holding their team accountable for results? So because I already went longer than I thought I would, I'll end on that. In summary, first step to improving your business is to ask yourself these questions. The next step is to prioritize what needs your attention first, and then take action. So if you get into a cadence of doing this, it's definitely going to improve your business. You got any questions? I'm over there in the corner. I'm out.
Woo! If you like the information you found here, then you will absolutely love Bradley On Demand. Bradley On Demand is the most comprehensive, in-depth virtual training platform in the automotive industry. We teach you everything from internet sales to phone sales, F&I, and everything in between. So sign up at www.bradleyondemand.com.